Can you bury my sister, sir? The little Apache girl's words cut through the mountain silence like a blade. A grizzled trapper thought he was done with caring, done with heartbreak, done with the world below his lonely cabin. But when he looked into those desperate eyes, clutching her dead baby sister after days of running, something buried deep in his soul began to stir. The cavalry wants her gone. The government has plans, and hidden in her torn dress is something that could change everything. He lost one daughter 15 years ago. Now the army wants to take another. But this mountain man has already made his choice. What happens when a broken father's promise collides with a system that shows no mercy? And what secret does that little girl carry that could save or damn them both? Every time I see your comments, I'm reminded how stories connect us across distances, backgrounds, and hearts. If values like respect, courage, and compassion still guide you, then you're part of this story too. The October wind whistled through the pines as Jeremiah McKinnon stepped onto his cabin's front porch. His weathered hands gripped a steaming cup of coffee, the morning ritual that started his days alone in the Colorado mountains. 15 years of solitude had taught him to savor these quiet moments. The crack of a branch made him pause. Through the crisp morning air, he spotted something that didn't belong, a small figure stumbling between the trees. His hand instinctively moved to his rifle, but as the shape drew closer, his heart clenched. It was a child barely standing, carrying something in her arms. The girl collapsed just yards from his porch. Jeremiah set down his cup and rushed forward, his boots crunching through frost-covered grass. As he reached her, he saw she wore torn Apache clothing. Her dark eyes glazed with exhaustion. In her arms lay a bundle wrapped in a faded blanket. "Can you bury my sister, sir?" The words came out in broken English, barely above a whisper. Jeremiah knelt beside her, memories of his own lost family surging up like a physical pain. The girl couldn't be more than 8 years old, her face gaunt from hunger, yet there was something in her bearing that spoke of dignity despite her desperate state. "What's your name, child?" he asked softly. "Yana," she replied, clutching the bundle closer. With gentle hands, Jeremiah examined the infant she carried. His throat tightened as he confirmed what he'd feared. The baby had been dead for at least 2 days. The girl must have carried her sister's body all that time, refusing to leave her behind. "Her name is Chenoa," Yana whispered, her fingers tracing her sister's blanket. Through a series of gestures, she indicated they'd been walking for days through the mountains. Jeremiah's practical mind warred with the sudden protective instinct rising in his chest. The girl needed immediate care. Her clothes were inadequate for the mountain cold, and her slight frame showed clear signs of malnourishment. Yet he'd sworn after losing Sarah and Emma that he'd never open his heart to such pain again. "Let's get you inside," he found himself saying, carefully lifting both girls in his arms. The cabin's warmth enveloped them as he carried them through the door. The single room was spare but tidy. A bed in one corner, a pot-bellied stove, rough-hewn table and chairs, and a stone fireplace where embers still glowed from the night before. He settled Yana near the fire, but when he tried to take Chenoa's body, the girl's grip tightened. Her eyes, though exhausted, held a fierce determination that made him step back. "All right," he said softly. "You keep her for now." He moved to the stove, adding wood to build up the heat. His hands worked automatically, preparing a simple meal of beans and dried venison, while his mind churned with memories he'd thought long buried. The last time he'd tended to a child had been the night Emma's fever peaked. Sarah had already been gone 3 days by then, and he'd watched helplessly as their daughter slipped away despite his desperate prayers. The pain had driven him to this isolated cabin, far from anyone he might grow to care for and lose. Now, as evening painted long shadows across the cabin floor, Jeremiah watched Yana sitting silently by the fire. She hadn't moved from her spot, still cradling her sister's body, refusing to relinquish her precious burden. The flickering flames cast an orange glow across her face, highlighting cheekbones sharp with hunger and eyes that had seen too much for their years. He ladled the warm food into a tin bowl and approached carefully, setting it beside her. "You need to eat something," he said, keeping his voice gentle. The girl's eyes met his, and in them he saw a reflection of his own grief, the same desperate need to hold on just a little longer, to deny the finality of death's separation. The food sat untouched as darkness gathered outside. Coyotes began their evening chorus in the distance, their mournful calls echoing off the mountainsides. Jeremiah added more wood to the fire, its crackling the only sound in the cabin besides Yana's soft breathing. He knew they would need to address the burial soon, but for now, he let the girl hold on to her sister, understanding too well the need to say goodbye in one's own time. Dawn light filtered through the cabin's single window as Jeremiah stirred the breakfast fire. He'd spent a restless night in his chair, watching over Yana, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion on a bedroll near the hearth, still clutching her sister's body. The girl's eyes fluttered open as the smell of coffee and frying cornmeal filled the small space. She sat up slowly, her small fingers still wrapped protectively around her precious bundle. Jeremiah knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "We need to prepare your sister for burial, child. It's time to let her rest." Yana's dark eyes welled with tears, but she nodded slowly. Her grip on Chenoa loosened just enough for Jeremiah to carefully lift the infant's body. He'd prepared a clean white sheet, one of Sarah's that he'd kept all these years, folded in his trunk. As he wrapped the tiny form with reverent care, Yana began to speak. Her words came haltingly, a mix of English and Apache, supported by expressive gestures that painted a horrifying picture. "We were at the stream," she said, her hands moving like flowing water. "Peaceful time, grandmother teaching me to weave baskets." Her fingers wove invisible patterns in the air. Then soldiers came, no warning. Jeremiah's jaw tightened as he listened. He'd heard whispers of unauthorized cavalry raids, but this was the first time he'd faced the human cost so directly. "Everyone running. Mother gave me Chenoa, said go, go." Yana's voice cracked. "I ran up mountain, heard shots, screaming." She pressed her small hands against her ears, as if trying to block out the memory. "Everyone gone. Mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, aunts, uncles." Her words trailed off into Apache phrases he couldn't understand, but their meaning was clear in her tears. "3 nights in mountains," she continued, hugging herself. "Chenoa cry less and less. Then..." She touched the wrapped bundle in Jeremiah's arms. Too cold. Too far. Jeremiah felt his throat constrict. The image of his own Emma, lost to cholera 15 years ago, overlapped with this brave child before him. Both daughters taken too soon, both fathers helpless to prevent it. "I know a good spot," he said softly, standing with Chenoa's body. "Near the aspens. The sun rises there first each morning." Yana followed him outside. The morning air was crisp, dew sparkling on the grass as they walked to a gentle slope where a grove of aspens swayed in the breeze. Their golden leaves danced in the sunlight, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground below. Jeremiah set Chenoa's body carefully aside and began to dig. The rhythm of the shovel striking earth filled the morning silence. Yana watched solemnly, her small frame straight and dignified, despite her exhaustion and grief. As he worked, a soft melody floated through the air. Yana had begun to hum, her clear voice carrying an Apache lullaby. The tune spoke of love and comfort, transcending the barrier of language. Jeremiah's hands slowed on the shovel handle as he listened, remembering how Sarah used to sing to Emma. When he paused to rest, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool morning, Yana approached him. In her small hands were wildflowers, purple asters and yellow blanket flowers she'd gathered while he worked. She placed them in his calloused palm, the simple gesture of trust and shared grief hitting him harder than any words could have. The sun was setting by the time they finished, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. They stood together at the small grave, now covered and marked with a circle of stones. The wildflowers lay scattered across the fresh earth, their bright colors stark against the dark soil. Yana spoke softly in Apache, then translated, "Grandmother say spirits dance in aspen leaves. Chenoa dance there now." She reached up and took Jeremiah's rough hand in her small one, squeezing gently. In that moment, looking down at their joined hands, Jeremiah felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to crumble. This child, who had lost everything but still found the strength to comfort others, awakened something he'd thought long dead, the desire to protect, to care, to be a father again. They stood together as darkness gathered, the aspens whispering above them, their leaves shimmering like stars in the fading light. Dawn painted the mountain sky in soft pinks and golds as Jeremiah and Yana made their way back to the aspen grove. The morning air was crisp, their breath forming small clouds in the October chill. Yana carried a small bundle of sacred items wrapped in deerskin, objects she had explained were important for Apache burial customs. At the graveside, Yana knelt carefully beside the fresh earth. Her small hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped her bundle, revealing a few precious items: a tiny medicine pouch, some dried herbs, and a beaded bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother. Jeremiah stood back respectfully as Yana began to sing. Her clear voice carried across the mountainside in ancient Apache words he didn't understand, but their meaning was clear in the tears that streaked her dusty cheeks. The song rose and fell like wind through the aspens, speaking of love and loss, of journeys and rest. Between songs, Yana placed each sacred item carefully around the grave. Her movements were precise despite her obvious exhaustion, following patterns passed down through generations. Jeremiah watched in silent admiration as this child of 8 years conducted herself with the dignity of an elder. When Yana finished her song, she looked up at Jeremiah and nodded slightly. Understanding her gesture, he stepped forward and removed his worn hat. His voice was rough with emotion as he spoke. "Dear Lord," he began simply, "please welcome this innocent child, Chenoa, into your loving arms. Guard her spirit and grant her peace." He paused, swallowing hard. "And Lord, watch over her sister here on earth." As the last words left his lips, Jeremiah heard a soft gasp. He turned just in time to see Yana's eyes roll back as she crumpled toward the ground. His arms shot out, catching her small body before she hit the earth. "Yana!" His heart pounded as he cradled her. She felt as light as a bird in his arms, her skin burning with fever. As he shifted her weight, his hand came away wet. Blood had soaked through the back of her torn dress. With gentle fingers, he pulled the fabric aside. His breath caught at what he found: 2 arrow wounds, crudely bound with strips torn from her skirt. The wounds were angry and hot, showing signs of infection. She had hidden them all this time, enduring the pain without a word of complaint. The sight struck him like a physical blow, memories flooding back of Emma's quiet courage during her final battle with cholera. His daughter had tried so hard to be brave, to spare him worry, just as Yana had done these past 2 days. "You're safe now, little one," he whispered, gathering her carefully in his arms. "I've got you." Jeremiah carried Yana back to the cabin, his long strides eating up the distance. Inside, he laid her face down on his bed and quickly gathered the supplies he would need. Sarah had taught him about mountain medicines during their years together, insisting he learn which herbs could fight infection and ease pain. Working methodically, he cleaned the wounds with boiled water and witch hazel. Yana stirred briefly, whimpering, but didn't wake. He applied a poultice of yarrow and golden seal, binding it carefully with clean strips of linen. When he finished, he gently turned her onto her side, pulling his quilt up to her shoulders. Looking at her small form in his big bed, Jeremiah suddenly remembered something. He crossed to the trunk in the corner, the one he hadn't opened in 15 years. Inside, carefully folded, lay Emma's clothes. His hands shook slightly as he lifted out a simple calico dress and white nightgown. When Yana finally woke hours later, he helped her change into Emma's nightgown. The fabric was soft with age, but clean and whole. Yana's fingers traced the small embroidered flowers at the collar, her eyes full of questions she was too weak to ask. "These belong to my daughter, Emma," Jeremiah explained quietly, helping her into the small bed that had stood empty in the corner since that terrible summer. "She was about your age when—" He couldn't finish, but Yana seemed to understand. She reached out and squeezed his rough hand with her small one. As night fell, Jeremiah sat in his chair by the fire, watching Yana sleep in Emma's bed. The sight stirred something deep in his chest, emotions he had walled away for 15 years. This brave child, who had lost everything but still found the strength to comfort others, who had endured pain and fear without complaint, had somehow slipped past all his defenses. "Just until she's strong enough to travel," he told himself gruffly, stoking the fire. But even as he said the words, something in his heart knew they weren't true. The walls he had built around his grief were crumbling, and in their place something new was growing, something that felt surprisingly like hope. The next 3 days settled into a gentle rhythm in Jeremiah's cabin. Each morning, he carefully changed Yana's bandages, his weathered hands moving with surprising tenderness. The infection slowly retreated under his careful treatment of mountain herbs and clean dressings. Though she winced at times, Yana never complained, watching him with trusting eyes that reminded him so much of Emma. They developed their own way of talking, piecing together meaning through Yana's growing English, the Apache words she taught him, and plenty of gestures. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, she took his hand and traced letters in his palm. "Yana," she said softly, then drew symbols he didn't recognize. In Apache language, it means eternal blossom. Her eyes grew distant. "Grandmother said I was named this because I was born when spring flowers covered the mountains." Jeremiah nodded, touched by this glimpse into her past. "It's a fine name," he said. "Suits you well." As her strength returned, Yana insisted on helping with cabin tasks. She moved slowly at first, but with determined purpose. Jeremiah often found her straightening his few belongings or sweeping the plank floor with careful attention. Her presence brought unexpected warmth to spaces that had known only solitude for 15 years. One afternoon, he returned from checking his trap lines to find her sitting cross-legged by the fire, one of his torn shirts in her lap. Her small fingers worked steadily with needle and thread, making neat stitches that would have made any seamstress proud. "Grandmother taught all girls to sew," she explained, holding up her work for inspection. "She said every stitch should carry good thoughts." Her face grew serious. She told many stories about finding good in all people, even those who seemed different or angry. Said everyone has a light inside, if we look with kind eyes. Jeremiah marveled at such wisdom coming from one so young, especially after all she'd lost. Yet Yana's resilience showed itself daily in small ways, in her determined efforts to learn English, in the way she hummed Apache melodies while working, in her insistence on contributing to their shared life. Her attempts at cooking brought unexpected laughter to the cabin. One morning, she tried making biscuits, carefully copying what she'd seen Jeremiah do. The results were black as coal on the bottom and raw in the middle. Instead of crying over the failure, she giggled, her face streaked with flour. "Maybe birds will eat them?" she suggested, making Jeremiah chuckle despite himself. "Reckon even the crows might think twice about these," he teased, surprising himself with how natural it felt to joke with her. As days passed, Jeremiah found himself watching for her shy smiles, the way her face lit up when she mastered a new English word or successfully completed a task. Her presence filled empty corners he hadn't even realized were there, bringing life to his solitary routine. On the fourth evening, they sat together at his rough-hewn table, sharing a simple supper of rabbit stew. The lamp cast warm light across Yana's face as she carefully spooned up the broth. She had regained some color in her cheeks, though her eyes still held shadows of all she'd seen. Suddenly, she looked up at him and spoke a word in Apache. "Ta." She touched her heart, then gestured to him. "It means Papa." The word hit Jeremiah like a physical blow. Joy and terror crashed through him in equal measure. Joy at the trust and love in her eyes, terror at how much it meant to him. He hadn't allowed himself to care this deeply about anyone since losing Sarah and Emma. That night, autumn wind rattled the cabin walls as Jeremiah sat in his chair by the fire. Across the room, Yana slept peacefully in Emma's bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow. The sight squeezed his heart. Somehow, without his noticing, he'd begun thinking of her as his daughter. He watched the steady rise and fall of her breathing, remembering how she'd called him Papa. The word echoed in his mind, breaking down walls he'd built around his heart. This child, who had lost everything, had found her way past all his defenses. She had brought light back into his dark places, teaching him that love was still possible, even after devastating loss. Dawn painted the Colorado mountains in soft gold when hoofbeats shattered the morning quiet. Jeremiah had just finished stoking the breakfast fire when he heard horses approaching. His spine stiffened at the rhythmic thud of military mounts, a sound no mountain man ever welcomed. Through the cabin's small window, he spotted 6 cavalry riders in crisp blue uniforms, led by a lieutenant whose ramrod-straight posture screamed career soldier. Jeremiah's heart clenched as he glanced at Yana, who sat cross-legged by the hearth mending one of his shirts. "Stay inside," he murmured, moving toward the door. She nodded, her dark eyes wide but trusting. The lieutenant dismounted with fluid grace, his spurs jingling against the packed earth. He stood tall and rigid, perhaps 35 years old, with hard eyes that had seen too much frontier violence. "Lieutenant Samuel Crawford, United States Cavalry," he announced crisply. "We're tracking hostile Apache raiders in this area." His gaze swept past Jeremiah to the cabin. "Had reports of smoke from your chimney? Seen anything suspicious?" "No raiders up here," Jeremiah replied carefully. "Just me and—" The cabin door creaked. Yana stepped onto the porch, her small figure wrapped in Emma's old dress but still wearing her Apache moccasins. Crawford's hand instantly moved to his pistol. "What's this?" he demanded. "A savage child here?" Jeremiah moved between them, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "She's an orphan. Her family was peaceful, Christian converts. They were killed in a raid few days back." "Indian lies," Crawford spat. "That clothing marks her as one of the hostiles we're tracking." He stepped forward, boots heavy on the porch boards. "You'll surrender her for transport to the reservation." "She's just a child," Jeremiah protested. "Been hurt, needs care." "A child who'll grow into a raider," Crawford cut him off. "Like the ones who murdered my brother Thomas 2 years ago." Raw pain flashed across his face before his features hardened again. "I won't let more good men die because soft-hearted fools harbor savages." Yana pressed against Jeremiah's back, trembling but holding her head high. Her small fingers clutched his coat as Crawford's men spread out, hands resting on weapons. "You've got 48 hours, Crawford announced. "Do the right thing for a white man. Surrender the girl." His eyes narrowed. "After that, harboring hostiles becomes a military matter." Jeremiah's hands clenched into fists. "She ain't no hostile." 48 hours, Crawford repeated. He turned sharply, his movement precise as a parade ground drill. "Don't make me return with more men." The patrol mounted up, hooves thundering away through the morning stillness. Only when they disappeared around the mountain bend did Jeremiah feel Yana's trembling increase. He turned and gathered her into his arms as she finally broke down, sobbing against his chest. "They killed them," she choked out between tears. "My family did nothing wrong. We were sleeping. The soldiers came at night." Her words dissolved into heartbroken Apache phrases he couldn't understand. Jeremiah held her close, his rough hand stroking her dark hair. "I know, little one. I know." The familiar weight of her in his arms felt right, like she belonged there, like she was meant to be his daughter. Through the day, Yana stayed close to him, jumping at every sound from the forest. As evening approached, she grew quieter, her usual humming replaced by watchful silence. Jeremiah saw fear in her eyes when she glanced at the door, and something in him hardened with resolve. He'd lost one daughter to forces beyond his control. He wouldn't lose another. That night, as shadows lengthened across the cabin floor, Jeremiah made his decision. Crawford's ultimatum had forced his hand, but in truth, the choice was already made the moment Yana had called him Papa. He would not give her up. Not to Crawford, not to anyone. Yana sat beside him at the fire, her small face solemn in the flickering light. Without words, she seemed to sense his decision. She leaned against his arm, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "We family now?" she asked softly in her careful English. Jeremiah wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Yes," he answered, his voice rough with emotion. "We're family." The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the wall as father and daughter sat together, facing whatever tomorrow might bring. Outside, a coyote called lonely across the darkening mountains, but inside the cabin, two hearts that had known too much loss found strength in their newfound bond. Moonlight filtered through the cabin's small window as Jeremiah watched Yana toss restlessly in Emma's old bed. Her small hands clutched the quilt, and she murmured troubled words in Apache. The cavalry's threat hung heavy in the darkness, making even sleep unsafe. Jeremiah moved quietly around the cabin by candlelight, gathering essentials. They would need food, blankets, medicine, anything they could carry on two horses. His practiced hands worked methodically, mind racing through mountain passes and hidden trails that might offer safe passage south. "Here, little one," he whispered when Yana startled awake from another nightmare. "Let's mend your dress while I pack. Might need it for the journey ahead." Yana nodded, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She retrieved her torn Apache dress from the trunk where they'd stored it. Together, they sat at the rough-hewn table, examining the damaged fabric by candlelight. As Jeremiah helped her turn the dress right side out, something metallic caught the flame's glow. "What's this?" His fingers found a small object sewn carefully into the hem. Yana leaned closer as he gently worked the item free. A silver medallion, tarnished but still beautiful. The flickering light revealed a familiar face etched in the metal. Jeremiah's breath caught. "Saint Miguel," he whispered, memories flooding back. This belonged to Father Miguel Santos. The name made Yana's eyes light up. "Father Miguel!" She touched the medallion reverently. "He gave to my grandmother before the soldiers." Her voice trailed off, thick with grief. "You knew him?" Jeremiah asked softly, though he already saw the answer in her face. The kind priest had been his friend years ago, before dying in what they'd all believed was an Apache attack. Yana nodded eagerly. "He lived with us 2 years, taught us English, Spanish, about Jesus." Her careful English grew more confident as she spoke of the priest. "He learned our ways too, respected the old ones, called us his children." She traced the saint's image with one small finger. "He baptized me, many others. Grandmother said he built bridges between peoples with love." Jeremiah's mind raced. "What happened to him, Yana?" Sadness clouded her face. "Soldiers came one day. Father Miguel tried to explain we were peaceful, but they wouldn't listen. Shot him when he stood between us and their guns." She blinked back tears. Grandmother kept his medallion to remember his love. The revelation struck Jeremiah like lightning. Father Miguel hadn't died in an Apache attack. He'd been killed trying to protect his peaceful converts. And now history had repeated itself with Yana's family. Peaceful Christians murdered by men too quick to assume the worst. He studied the medallion, remembering conversations with his old friend. "Father Miguel had a niece in Santa Fe," he said slowly. "Maria Elena Santos. She runs a trading post there." "Yes," Yana's face brightened. "She visited sometimes, brought books, medicines, kind like him?" Jeremiah stood, decision made. "Then that's where we'll go. Maria Elena will understand about your family. Maybe she can help us find a way to keep you safe, legal-like." He moved with renewed purpose, packing faster now. The trading post was a 4-day ride south if they pushed hard and the weather held. They would need to leave before first light, taking the old hunting trails to avoid the cavalry's usual routes. Yana helped pack, her small hands folding clothes and gathering dried herbs with quiet efficiency. The medallion hung safely around her neck now, a symbol of hope and connection to both her past and their uncertain future. "Your family weren't raiders," Jeremiah said softly as they worked. "They were good people trying to live in peace, just like Father Miguel taught." Yana paused, looking up at him with eyes too wise for her years. Grandmother said Father Miguel showed that love is stronger than fear, that different peoples can become one family. Jeremiah felt the truth of those words in his heart as he watched this brave Apache child who had become his daughter in all but law. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together, carrying Father Miguel's legacy of bridge-building love. Outside, the stars wheeled toward dawn, marking the hours until Crawford's deadline. But inside the cabin, father and daughter prepared for their journey, their path lit by a silver medallion and the hope of sanctuary in Santa Fe. Before the first hint of dawn touched the mountain peaks, Jeremiah led his sturdy bay horse from the small barn. The autumn air bit sharp and cold as he secured their supplies on 2 pack mules. Yana emerged from the cabin wearing Emma's old wool coat, her face solemn but determined in the lantern light. "Ready, little one?" Jeremiah lifted her onto the horse before mounting behind her. She nodded, clutching Father Miguel's medallion beneath her coat. They set out as the eastern sky began to pale, leaving the safety of the cabin behind. Jeremiah guided them away from the main trails, following hidden paths he'd discovered during 15 years of trapping. The horse picked its way carefully through stands of aspen and pine, while the pack mules trudged steadily behind. The morning sun rose to find them high in the mountains, following game trails so faint only an experienced woodsman could spot them. Yana sat straight in the saddle, never complaining about the jolting ride or the biting wind that whipped through the passes. Her small body pressed warm against Jeremiah's chest as they rode, somehow making the lonely mountains feel less empty. "Tell me more about Father Miguel," Jeremiah said as they paused to rest the animals near a mountain stream. "What was he like with your people?" Yana's face brightened as she gathered pine needles for their noon tea. "He learned our words first, said he couldn't share God's love without understanding our hearts." She smiled at the memory. "Made many mistakes at first, but the old one said his humble spirit made up for his clumsy tongue." "That sounds like Miguel," Jeremiah chuckled, remembering his friend's gentle humor. "Did he join in your ceremonies?" "Yes," Yana nodded eagerly. "Sat with elders at gatherings, learned our stories, said Creator spoke through all peoples." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But kept his own faith too. Showed us how different ways could live together like branches of same tree." As they continued their journey, Yana described how Father Miguel had helped arrange trade with Mexican settlements, teaching both sides to see past fear to the humanity they shared. Her clear voice painted pictures of peaceful gatherings where Apache families traded blankets and leather goods for metal tools and cloth, while the priest translated not just words but customs and meanings. "He made peace grow like corn in summer," Yana said softly, "until the soldiers came." Jeremiah's jaw tightened, understanding now how the army's harsh policies had trampled the delicate bridges Father Miguel had built between peoples. The priest's death had destroyed more than one man's life. It had shattered a model of cooperation that might have changed the whole territory. Near midday on their second day of travel, Jeremiah spotted dust rising from the valley below. He reined the horse behind a rocky outcrop, heart pounding as he recognized Crawford's patrol threading through the pass below. 6 riders moving fast and purposeful, searching for them. "Hold still, little one," he whispered, though Yana was already quiet as a shadow. They watched until the patrol disappeared around a bend, then turned their mount toward a steeper, more treacherous route through narrow canyon walls. The new path would add days to their journey, but better that than risk capture. That evening, they made camp in a sheltered hollow, using only a tiny fire that wouldn't be visible from below. The stars emerged brilliant and cold above the canyon walls as they shared a simple meal of jerky and hard biscuits. Yana huddled close to Jeremiah, both for warmth and comfort. "Papa," she said softly in Apache, then switched to English. "Do you mean to keep me? Forever?" Jeremiah's heart squeezed at the mix of hope and fear in her voice. He looked down into eyes that held both ancient wisdom and childlike vulnerability. "Yes, little blossom," he answered quietly. "Forever." Tears spilled down Yana's cheeks as she pressed her face against his rough coat. Jeremiah wrapped his arms around her, marveling at how this small girl had awakened such fierce love in his long-dormant heart. They were outlaws now, pursued by soldiers facing an uncertain future, yet somehow, holding his daughter under the endless stars, Jeremiah felt more right than he had in 15 years. They slept curled together for warmth, Yana's small form tucked trustingly against him like a fawn against its parent. The night wind sang through the canyon, carrying the lonely cry of a distant coyote, but father and daughter rested peaceful in their shared belonging. The third morning of their journey dawned cold and misty. Jeremiah guided their horse through a narrow canyon, weathered walls rising steep on both sides. The pack mule's hooves clicked against loose stones echoing off the rock faces. Yana dozed against his chest, worn from 2 days of hard riding. A sharp clatter of rocks ahead snapped them both alert. Jeremiah's heart sank as 6 riders emerged from the canyon's bend, blocking their path. Lieutenant Crawford sat straight-backed on his mount, blue uniform stark against the red canyon walls. "McKinnon," Crawford called out, voice hard as iron. "Nowhere left to run." Jeremiah assessed their situation with growing dread. The canyon walls offered no escape, and the path behind them was too narrow to turn quickly. He felt Yana trembling against him, but noticed how she held her head high, showing the same quiet dignity she'd displayed since the day he found her. "We're just passing through, Lieutenant." Jeremiah kept his voice steady. "No need for trouble." Crawford's jaw tightened as he urged his horse forward. "You're harboring an Apache fugitive. That's trouble enough." Something raw flickered in his eyes as he added, "Every savage in this territory needs to be removed. Every last one." "She's just a child," Jeremiah protested. "Her family were peaceful converts." "Peaceful?" Crawford's laugh held no humor. "My brother Thomas thought some were peaceful too, trusted them." His voice cracked slightly. 2 years ago, they proved him wrong. Found him with Apache arrows in his back. The pain in Crawford's voice made Jeremiah study him closer. Beyond the rigid military bearing, he saw a man haunted by more than just loss. "I was on watch that night," Crawford continued, words spilling out like poison from a wound. "Had too much whiskey. Didn't sound the alarm when scouts reported war parties nearby." His knuckles whitened on his reins. "Thomas paid the price for my failure." Understanding dawned in Jeremiah's mind. Crawford's hatred of the Apache masked a deeper self-loathing. The man before them wasn't simply a cruel soldier. He was a brother trying to atone for an unforgivable mistake. To Jeremiah's surprise, Yana suddenly shifted in the saddle. Before he could stop her, she slipped down and approached Crawford's horse. The other soldiers tensed, hands moving to weapons, but Crawford held up a staying hand, staring at the small figure before him. Yana uncapped her water canteen and held it up to the lieutenant. Her voice came soft but clear in Apache, the musical words echoing off the canyon walls. Crawford didn't move for a long moment, something uncertain crossing his face as he looked down at her outstretched hand. Finally, he accepted the canteen, taking a small sip before passing it back. "What did she say?" he asked roughly. "I don't know all her words," Jeremiah admitted. "We'll need Maria Elena Santos to translate when we reach Santa Fe." Crawford's expression hardened at the mention of their destination. He handed back the canteen, then wheeled his horse aside. "Pass through," he ordered curtly. "But hear this. I'll be watching for you at every town and trading post between here and Santa Fe. This isn't over." Jeremiah lifted Yana back into the saddle, relief warring with worry in his chest. As they rode past the patrol, Crawford's voice followed them. "The territory's changing, McKinnon. No place left for savages or those who help them." They rode in silence until the canyon opened into a wider valley. Only then did Jeremiah release the breath he'd been holding. "That was a brave thing you did back there, little one," he said softly, offering him water. Yana nodded solemnly. "Grandmother said hurt people hurt others. Need kindness most." Jeremiah pondered her words as they continued their journey. Crawford's revelation had changed things. A man driven by guilt and self-hatred was more dangerous than a simple enemy, and more unpredictable. The lieutenant would never stop pursuing them until he found some way to quiet his own demons. The sun climbed higher as they picked their way through the rugged country, each mile bringing them closer to Santa Fe and Maria Elena Santos, who might help them understand not only Yana's words to Crawford, but perhaps a way forward through this dangerous territory they all shared. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the adobe walls of Santa Fe as Jeremiah and Yana approached Maria Elena Santos's trading post. The sturdy building stood on the town's outskirts, its wooden sign weathered but welcoming. Strings of dried chilies hung from the porch rafters, their red color vibrant against whitewashed walls. Pack mules and horses were tied at hitching posts, their diverse tack suggesting owners from many different cultures. Jeremiah helped a weary Yana down from their horse. 4 days of hard mountain travel had left them both exhausted, their clothes dusty from the trail. The trading post's door opened, and a woman in her 40s emerged, her dark hair streaked with silver and her face creased with laugh lines. She wore a practical cotton dress with a colorful Mexican shawl draped over her shoulders. "Welcome, travelers," she called out in clear English. "I'm Maria Elena Santos." Jeremiah guided Yana forward, one protective hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, I'm Jeremiah McKinnon. We've come a long way, hoping to find help." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew Father Miguel's silver medallion, holding it out. "This belonged to your uncle." Maria Elena's eyes widened as she took the medallion, her fingers tracing the image of Saint Miguel. "Where did you find this?" "It was sewn into Yana's dress," Jeremiah explained. He briefly recounted their story, finding Yana at his cabin, the cavalry's threats, their desperate journey to Santa Fe. Maria Elena knelt down to study Yana more closely, her experienced eyes noting the girl's tribal markings. A warm smile spread across her face as she spoke in fluid Apache, her words gentle and familiar. Yana's eyes filled with tears at hearing her native language spoken with such warmth. She responded eagerly, words tumbling out as she found someone who truly understood her. The two carried on an animated conversation while Jeremiah watched, touched by the joy lighting up Yana's face. "Come inside, both of you," Maria Elena finally said, switching back to English. "You're safe here." The trading post's interior was neat and well organized, with goods from multiple cultures sharing the shelves. Mexican pottery sat beside Apache baskets. English tea sets nestled next to Spanish spices. As they watched, a Mexican family completed a purchase while an Apache trader examined blankets nearby. An Anglo settler waited patiently for his turn, nodding respectfully to everyone. "This is what Uncle Miguel dreamed of," Maria Elena explained, leading them to her private quarters behind the store. A place where all people could trade and talk in peace. Her eyes grew distant. He lived with Yana's band for 2 years, learning their ways while sharing his faith. He showed us all how to build bridges instead of walls. The kitchen was warm and inviting, filled with delicious smells. Maria Elena served them a hearty supper of beef stew and fresh tortillas while sharing stories about Father Miguel. Yana sat close to her, drinking in every word about the priest who had meant so much to her people. "Tia," Yana said suddenly, using the Spanish word for aunt. "Will you tell the story about when Father Miguel learned to make Apache fry bread?" Maria Elena laughed, launching into a tale about her uncle's early cooking disasters. Yana's giggles filled the room, the sound making Jeremiah's heart swell. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt such simple, profound joy. After Yana had gone to sleep on a comfortable pallet, Maria Elena and Jeremiah sat talking by lamplight. "I can help you make this legal," she said. "I have connections with a judge who understands these situations. We can draw up adoption papers that will make Yana your daughter in the eyes of the law." "You'd do that for us?" Jeremiah asked, hardly daring to hope. Maria Elena nodded firmly. "Uncle Miguel gave his life trying to bring peace between peoples. The least I can do is help the child he baptized find a loving home." She began gathering paper and ink. "We'll start the documents tonight." Jeremiah watched her work, feeling as if a great weight had lifted from his shoulders. Here in this trading post, with its mingled sounds of Spanish, Apache, and English, he could see the future Father Miguel had envisioned. A future where Yana could grow up proud of both her Apache heritage and her new family, where bridges between cultures meant more than the walls that divided them. For the first time since finding Yana collapsed outside his cabin, Jeremiah allowed himself to believe that everything might work out. As Maria Elena's pen scratched across paper, drawing up the documents that would make him Yana's legal father, hope bloomed as warm and bright as the lamplight illuminating their small circle of newfound family. The trading post buzzed with life during those 3 peaceful days. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes dancing in the air as customers came and went. The scent of coffee and Maria Elena's fresh-baked bread mingled with the earthy smell of leather goods and dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Yana blossomed in this welcoming environment, where once she had been hesitant and withdrawn, she now played freely with the children who visited the trading post with their parents. Mexican children taught her to play jacks with sheep knuckle bones, while Apache youngsters showed her string games passed down through generations. Even shy Anglo settlers' children joined in, language barriers melting away in the universal joy of childhood games. "Papa, look!" Yana called out one morning, switching easily between English and Apache as she showed Jeremiah a cat's cradle pattern she had learned. Her dark eyes sparkled with pride as she demonstrated the intricate string design. "Well done, Little Blossom," Jeremiah replied, his pronunciation careful as he used the Apache words Maria Elena had taught him. His heart swelled each time Yana called him Papa, the word feeling more natural with each passing day. In the evenings, Maria Elena sat with them in her cozy kitchen, official papers spread across the wooden table as she corresponded with territorial authorities. The scratch of her pen and the warm glow of lamplight created a peaceful atmosphere as she worked to secure Yana's future. "The judge is sympathetic to our cause," she explained one night, sealing another envelope. "He remembers Uncle Miguel's work fondly." While Maria Elena handled the legal matters, Jeremiah made himself useful around the trading post. His years of mountain living had given him skills that proved valuable. He fixed the leaking roof, reinforced shelving units, and helped handle difficult customers with his quiet but firm presence. One afternoon, a heated argument broke out between two traders over prices. Jeremiah's calm intervention and fair-minded approach resolved the dispute, earning respectful nods from both men. "Much obliged," the Apache trader said in careful English, while his Mexican counterpart added, "Gracias, señor." The most precious moments came at bedtime. Maria Elena discovered that Jeremiah's late wife had learned Apache lullabies during her own childhood near tribal lands. She taught him the songs he half remembered, helping him pronounce each word correctly. Now he could sing to Yana in both languages, watching her eyes grow heavy as he mixed English nursery rhymes with Apache melodies. "Tell me about the clever coyote again," Yana would request, snuggling into her blankets. Jeremiah would weave together stories from both cultures, with Maria Elena occasionally adding details in Apache when his vocabulary fell short. The trading post became a second home, filled with the warmth of their growing family bond. Maria Elena moved through the space with maternal grace, teaching Yana traditional recipes while helping Jeremiah understand Apache customs. Together, they created something beautiful, a family built on choice rather than blood. Local families embraced them with open hearts. Mexican mothers sent over fresh tortillas, Apache grandmothers offered wisdom about raising children, and Anglo settlers stopped by with practical gifts for the new family. Their acceptance proved what Father Miguel had always preached, that fear was a choice and understanding was possible when people opened their hearts. On the third evening, they gathered around Maria Elena's kitchen table, sharing a meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and Apache flatbread that Yana had helped prepare. The girl sat up straight, her face serious as she made an announcement. "I want to learn to read," she declared, looking between her new father and aunt, "in English and Apache both, like Father Miguel did." Maria Elena's eyes glistened with tears. "You want to build bridges between people, little one?" Yana nodded solemnly. "Father Miguel said books hold the power to help people understand each other. I want to help people understand, too." Jeremiah reached across the table to take his daughter's small hand. "Then we'll make sure you learn, Little Blossom. Both languages, both ways of seeing the world." "All three," Maria Elena corrected with a smile. "She should learn Spanish, too. The more bridges we build, the stronger we all become." The kitchen filled with warm lamplight as they continued their meal, their conversation flowing easily between languages. Outside, the sun set over Santa Fe's adobe buildings, painting the sky in shades of hope. Inside, their small family unit grew stronger with each shared word, each shared smile, each shared dream of a future where understanding trumped fear. The soft, golden light of dawn had barely touched the trading post's weathered walls when Lieutenant Crawford arrived. He wasn't alone. Two territorial officials in dark suits flanked him, their expressions grim as they dismounted. The crunch of their boots on gravel sounded like thunder in the quiet morning air. Maria Elena met them at the door, her usual warm smile replaced by cautious concern. Jeremiah stood protectively near Yana, who pressed close to his side, her small fingers gripping his worn leather vest. "We have orders," Crawford announced, his voice carrying none of its usual harshness. Instead, he seemed almost apologetic as he handed Maria Elena an official document bearing military seals. "New policy from Washington." Maria Elena's face paled as she read. Her hands trembled, causing the paper to shake. "This cannot be right," she whispered. The older of the two officials, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, stepped forward. "I'm afraid it is, ma'am. All Apache children are to be sent to the government boarding school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. No exceptions." "But we have adoption papers in process," Jeremiah protested, his voice rough with emotion. "She's my daughter now." Crawford shook his head. "The new order supersedes any local arrangements, and—" He paused, glancing at Maria Elena. "Given your mixed heritage, ma'am, you're legally unfit as a guardian under the new policy." Yana understood enough English to grasp what was happening. Her body went rigid against Jeremiah's side. Without a word, she broke away and ran into the trading post's back storage room, disappearing among the stacked crates and hanging dried goods. 24 hours, the younger official said softly. "That's all we can give you. We'll return at dawn tomorrow." After they left, Maria Elena rushed to her telegraph machine. The clicking of the key filled the trading post as she sent urgent messages to every contact she had: territorial judges, Washington officials, even church authorities who had supported her uncle's work. Jeremiah stood rooted in place, his world crumbling around him. The familiar weight of failure pressed down on his chest, just as it had 15 years ago when he couldn't save his wife and daughter from cholera. He had promised to protect Yana, and now he was powerless against a piece of paper from Washington. Throughout the day, replies to Maria Elena's telegrams arrived. Each response brought the same message: nothing could be done. The policy was final. "Even the judge who was helping us," Maria Elena said, her voice breaking as she read the latest message. "He says his hands are tied." The sun crossed the sky, but Yana remained hidden in the storage room. Jeremiah brought her food: fresh bread, dried fruit, even the sweet candy sticks she loved. But everything remained untouched. Her silence cut deeper than any crying could have. As evening settled over Santa Fe, Jeremiah finally went to sit with her in the darkness of the storage room. He found her curled up behind a stack of wool blankets, Father Miguel's medallion clutched in her small hand. The sight reminded him painfully of that first morning at his cabin, when she had refused to let go of her sister's body. He settled down beside her, not touching, just being present. The scents of leather, dried herbs, and coffee beans filled the air around them. Through the small window, they could hear the evening sounds of Santa Fe: cartwheels on dirt streets, distant church bells, mothers calling children home for supper. "I failed you, little Blossom," Jeremiah whispered into the darkness. "Just like I failed my Emma." Yana stirred slightly at his words. Though she didn't speak, her hand found his in the shadows and squeezed it. Even in her own pain, she tried to offer comfort. The gesture nearly broke him. They sat together as night deepened, neither speaking, both feeling the weight of a system bigger than their love for each other. Maria Elena's footsteps moved through the trading post as she continued sending telegrams, refusing to give up hope. But the clicking of the telegraph key seemed to count down the hours they had left, like the ticking of a merciless clock. The night air grew cool and Jeremiah wrapped one of the wool blankets around Yana's shoulders. She leaned against him then, her small body trembling slightly. He had thought love would be enough, that if he opened his heart again after 15 years of keeping it closed, if he dared to care for another child, somehow everything would work out. But now he faced the brutal truth that sometimes love wasn't enough to overcome an unjust world. In the darkness of the storage room, father and daughter held on to each other, neither willing to acknowledge that their time together was measured now in mere hours. Dawn painted the adobe walls of the trading post in shades of rose and gold, but the beauty brought no comfort. Jeremiah paced the wooden floor, his boots making hollow sounds against the planks. The 24-hour deadline loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon. Yana remained withdrawn, curled in the storage room's shadows, speaking only in whispers when she spoke at all. Maria Elena kept busy at her counter, reorganizing items that needed no organizing, her usual cheerful manner subdued. The morning's first customers sensed the heavy atmosphere and conducted their business quickly, leaving behind awkward silences. When Lieutenant Crawford's horse appeared in the dusty street, Jeremiah's hand instinctively moved to his rifle. But something was different. Crawford rode alone, his military posture less rigid than usual. He dismounted slowly, as if carrying a great weight on his shoulders. "Miss Santos," he said, removing his hat. "Might I have a word? In private?" Maria Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "My kitchen," she said, leading him through the trading post's back door. In the kitchen's warm confines, Maria Elena gestured for Crawford to sit at the worn wooden table. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the silver threads in her dark hair. She poured 2 cups of coffee, setting one before the lieutenant. "Before you speak," she said softly, "let me tell you a story about family, Lieutenant, about my Uncle Miguel, and what his death taught me." Crawford's hands tightened around the coffee cup, but he remained silent. "When the soldiers killed him, I wanted to hate," Maria Elena continued. "I wanted to blame all white men, all military men. But hatred is a poison that destroys the vessel that holds it." She touched the medallion at her throat, identical to the one Yana carried. "Uncle Miguel taught me that building bridges requires courage from both sides. The courage to see past fear, past pain, past loss." Crawford's voice was rough when he spoke. "Your uncle? He lived with the Apache?" "For 2 years. He learned their language, respected their ways while sharing his faith. He showed that love could bridge any divide." Maria Elena leaned forward. "Just as love has bridged the divide between Jeremiah and Yana." "I've been watching," Crawford admitted. "These past days, the way she looks at him, the way he swallowed hard. The way he protects her, like my father should have protected Thomas." A soft sound drew their attention. Yana stood in the kitchen doorway, her small face solemn. In her hands, she carried a tin cup filled with fresh water. With measured steps, she approached Crawford. "Nahoni deba nawidzin," she said quietly, offering him the water. "Niha dahonide." Crawford's hand shook as he accepted the cup. What does she say? Maria Elena's eyes glistened. She says, "May your heart find peace, and may you find the family your soul seeks." The cup slipped from Crawford's grasp, clattering on the table. Water spilled across the wooden surface, but no one moved to wipe it away. The lieutenant stared at Yana, seeing for the first time not an enemy, not a savage, but a child offering grace to the man who sought to destroy her family. "Thomas," he whispered, his voice breaking. "My brother. He died because I was drunk on duty. I failed him. I failed." His shoulders began to shake. "I've been so angry, so filled with hate. But it won't bring him back, will it?" "No," Maria Elena said gently. "Just as taking Yana from her new father won't ease your pain." Yana reached out, her small hand touching Crawford's uniform sleeve. The gesture, so innocent and pure, broke something loose in the lieutenant's heart. Tears spilled down his weathered cheeks. "I see him," Crawford said. "McKinnon. How he looks at her, like my father used to look at Thomas and me before the drink took him." He drew a shuddering breath. "I've been so wrong, so blind." Maria Elena placed her hand over his. "It's never too late to build a bridge, Lieutenant. Never too late to choose love over hate." Crawford straightened in his chair, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. Something had shifted in his face, as if years of bitterness were falling away. He looked at Yana with new eyes, not as an enemy's child, but as the brave, compassionate soul she was. Jeremiah appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of voices. He moved protectively toward Yana, but she remained beside Crawford, her presence a testament to the power of forgiveness. The morning light filled the kitchen, turning the spilled water on the table to liquid gold. In that moment, surrounded by the scents of coffee and fresh bread, 4 wounded souls stood at a crossroads where hatred and love met, where the past's dark shadows faced the possibility of a brighter future. The morning sun climbed higher as Lieutenant Crawford strode purposefully into the territorial official's temporary office, his polished boots clicking against the wooden floor. The 3 men looked up from their paperwork, surprised by his determined expression. "Gentlemen," Crawford announced, his voice steady and clear, "I must report the results of my thorough search of the trading post and surrounding area." He placed his hat on their desk and stood at parade rest. "There are no Apache children present in this district requiring removal to Carlisle. None whatsoever." The officials exchanged puzzled glances. "But, Lieutenant, we were informed." "Furthermore," Crawford continued, producing a leather document case, "I have uncovered evidence regarding the attack on the Apache band near Willow Creek last month." He withdrew several official-looking papers. "The raid was conducted by Captain Marcus Reed's unit, acting without proper authorization. Reed has since been court-martialed for exceeding orders and attacking peaceful tribes." The senior official, a gray-haired man named Thompson, adjusted his spectacles to examine the documents. "These are quite serious allegations, Lieutenant." "They are facts, sir. Captain Reed's actions violated standing treaties with Christianized bands. Any survivors of his unauthorized attack would not be legally subject to the removal order, as they were peaceful, protected peoples at the time of the incident." Back at the trading post, Jeremiah held Yana's small hand as they waited. Maria Elena kept busy brewing coffee and arranging fresh bread on her kitchen table, though her eyes constantly darted to the window. When Crawford returned 2 hours later, his face bore a hint of satisfaction. Behind him rode the territorial officials, their expressions notably relieved. Thompson dismounted first, brushing trail dust from his coat. "Mr. McKinnon," he called out, "we have reviewed Lieutenant Crawford's evidence and reports. There appears to be no legal impediment to your adoption petition." He smiled briefly. "In fact, the lieutenant's military connections have helped expedite the process considerably." Yana's grip on Jeremiah's hand tightened. He squeezed back gently, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. Maria Elena stepped forward, her dark eyes bright. "I would be honored to serve as character witness for both father and daughter." The officials spent the next hour completing paperwork at Maria Elena's kitchen table. Yana watched solemnly as Jeremiah signed his name with careful strokes. When Thompson pressed his official seal into red wax on the final document, the sound seemed to echo through the quiet kitchen. "Congratulations, Miss McKinnon," Thompson said kindly to Yana. "You have a fine father." After the officials departed, Crawford lingered. He stood awkwardly by the door, his usual military bearing absent. "McKinnon," he said quietly, "might I have a word?" They stepped outside into the late afternoon sunshine. Crawford removed his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. "There is something I must confess," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "About my brother Thomas. About why I have carried such hatred." The words seemed to pain him physically. "I was drunk that night, on duty. When the war party was spotted, I failed to sound the alarm in time." His shoulders sagged. "Thomas died because of my negligence, my weakness." Jeremiah remained silent, watching the broken man before him. "I have asked God for forgiveness," Crawford continued, "but I cannot seem to forgive myself, and I have done terrible things, trying to atone through hatred instead of grace." He looked up, meeting Jeremiah's eyes. "Can you forgive me for what I nearly did to your family?" Jeremiah saw in Crawford's face the same torment he had carried for years after losing his wife and daughter, the same crushing weight of failure and guilt. "I reckon," he said slowly, "that a man carrying that much pain needs mercy more than judgment." Crawford's eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve it." "None of us do," Jeremiah replied, That's what makes it mercy. Inside the trading post, Maria Elena was already preparing for a celebration. The aroma of roasting meat and baking bread filled the air. Yana helped set the table, humming an Apache melody that mingled with the sound of Maria Elena's Spanish prayers of thanksgiving. As evening settled over Santa Fe, the trading post glowed with lamplight and laughter. Customers who had witnessed their struggles over the past days stopped by with small gifts. Fresh vegetables, hand-woven blankets, even a new dress for Yana sewn by the milliner's wife. Crawford stayed for supper, sitting quietly at the end of the table. When Yana offered him the first piece of fresh bread, his hands trembled as he accepted it. The simple gesture of grace from the child he had once feared touched something deep in his wounded soul. They ate together, the mountain man who had found his heart again, the Apache girl who had never lost her capacity for love, the Mexican Apache woman who built bridges between worlds, and the cavalry officer learning that redemption often came in unexpected ways. Outside, stars appeared in the darkening sky, witnesses to the healing of broken hearts and the formation of a most unusual family. Spring blossoms dotted the courtyard of Maria Elena's trading post, as April's sunshine warmed the gathered families. The scent of fresh tortillas and roasting meat mingled with the sweet fragrance of flowering apple trees. Mexican children played tag between market stalls while Apache mothers taught Anglo girls to weave small baskets. The sound of multiple languages, Spanish, English, and Apache, created a harmony of voices that would have made Father Miguel smile. Jeremiah McKinnon leaned against a wooden post, his weathered face softened by joy as he watched Yana teaching other children a traditional Apache game with painted stones. 6 months had transformed both their lives completely. His once lonely cabin now rang with her laughter and songs. She slept peacefully in his daughter Emma's old bed, no longer plagued by nightmares of that terrible night. "She grows stronger every day," Maria Elena said, appearing beside him with a cup of coffee. "In body and spirit." Jeremiah nodded, accepting the steaming cup. "She's teaching me as much as I teach her. My Apache still needs work, but I can tell her the old stories now, both mine and her people's." "And she calls you Papa in both languages," Maria Elena smiled. "The way she lights up when you visit here. That's pure love." Their life had found a gentle rhythm. They spent most days at the mountain cabin where Jeremiah taught Yana hunting, tracking, and the ways of the wilderness. Every few weeks, they traveled to Santa Fe, where Maria Elena helped maintain Yana's connection to her Apache heritage, while strengthening their unusual family bonds. Lieutenant Crawford, now stationed at a peaceful trading post near Santa Fe, crossed the courtyard carrying a wooden toy he'd carved. The past months had softened the hard edges of his military bearing. Working with local tribes and seeing the success of peaceful cooperation had begun to heal his deepest wounds. The Territory Office approved funding for the new schoolhouse, he announced, pride evident in his voice. "All children welcome, regardless of background. We'll teach in 3 languages, just like Father Miguel always wanted." The afternoon sun slanted golden across the trading post as families gathered for the harvest feast. Tables groaned under the weight of dishes from every culture, Apache flatbread beside Mexican tamales and Anglo apple pies. Children darted between adults, their laughter a melody of hope. Yana broke away from her playmates and approached Jeremiah, her dark eyes holding wisdom far beyond her 9 years. She took his calloused hand in her small one. "Papa," she said softly, "I've been thinking about that first morning, when I asked you to bury my sister." Jeremiah knelt down to her level, his heart full of tender concern. "You did more than just bury Chenoa," she continued. "You helped bury my sadness too, and gave me a new family." She touched the silver medallion of St. Miguel that still hung around her neck. "Like Father Miguel taught us, love makes new families stronger than blood." Crawford raised his cup, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "To families that choose each other," he called out, "and bridges built from love, not fear." The gathered community, Mexican, Apache, and Anglo alike, lifted their cups in response. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, their voices joined together in celebration of what Father Miguel had dreamed possible: a community healed by compassion, where differences enriched rather than divided. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.